and welcome to the program. This is Vivica Williams, and you're watching Head to Head. After years of requests, the U.S. has approved the sale of lethal defensive weapons to Ukraine. For most of the time the war has been raging in the east, Ukraine has been in a great disadvantage, one with tragic and often devastating consequences when it came to countering Russia-supplied militants. So what does the U.S.'s decision mean for Ukraine now, 3 years on? To answer this question today, joining us in the studio is Mykhaylo Samus, Deputy Director for International Affairs at the Center for Army, Conversion, and Disarmament Studies. Mykhaylo, thank you so much for being with us today.
Hello.
Yes. So, I think on Monday, your center commented that the U.S. decision to provide lethal weapons is no longer strategically critical for Ukraine. So is it too little too late?
No, actually, what I meant in these words, that actually now Ukraine and the United States have a little bit more strategic business in other spheres. I mean in military spheres, but if you're talking about the Russian-Ukrainian war and actually situation on the Euro-Atlantic space, I would say that now Ukraine is a more key element than, let's say, 2 or 3 years ago. What I mean, for example, Poland now is discussing with the United States possibilities to get some deep strike missiles like Tomahawk, for example, because it's a very strict situation, let's say, a very bad situation in the Baltic states and Poland because of Russian threat. What I meant about javelins, for example, that actually it's a tactical weapons, which is very important in Donbass now, for example. But if we're talking about a more strategic situation and a more strategic relationship between the United States and Ukraine, we could speak already about higher level, like a deep, because Ukraine needs deep strike missile as well as Poland.
So we're talking about this announcement by the U.S. to allow the sale of lethal defensive weapons to Ukraine. So in that case, is this something, Ukraine has been requesting this since 2014. So now that the case, they're allowing the sale of these weapons, is it something that's a bit too late? Does Ukraine already have the capacity to buy these weapons from other sources, or at the same time producing its own defensive weapons?
No, actually, any help is important, of course, when you're fighting with Russia, because it's a huge country with a huge strategic potential, and any help is very important for Ukraine now. But actually, for now, it's not so important like 3 years ago, of course. And if you're talking about the importance of this signal from United States, I would say it's like a signal for other world that Ukraine has a special status of relationship between United States and Kiev, and now, for example, Paris or Berlin could help Ukraine as well, because maybe it's a surprise for you or paradox, but it exists some actually prohibition of military technical cooperation, so export between France, Germany and Ukraine.
So you're thinking maybe that with the U.S., this is the first step in other countries looking at opening up their ability to sell lethal weapons.
Yeah, it's like a signal for NATO. It's a signal for NATO, and if it, again, I could compare to Poland. If we remember the decisions of Obama administration about anti-missile systems, it was kind of 10 years ago, mostly. 10 years ago, Poland and the United States started to develop strategic relationship, and now they started to buy, for example, Patriots and talking about Tomahawk. So we should start. I mean, Ukraine and the United States need to start to discuss this question, and this first signal that Ukraine could get this weapons, lethal weapons, and maybe I think because of war, it could be a little bit faster than Poland and the United States. Maybe in a couple of years we will get some new decisions with more and more important,
right. Because the Javelin anti-tank missiles aren't included in this. Is that correct?
Yeah, actually, it's not open yet. I mean, what kind of package we've got, but in some newspapers, United States, they told that it's Javelins as well, like 41 millions for 200 missiles and 31 or something like this launchers. So it's like a first package to understand how Ukraine could operate it. What is the situation with confidence? Actually, you know, Russian spies could be inside the Ministry of Defense still. As you remember, just a couple days ago, the SBU opened the Russian spy close to Prime Minister. So it means that still we have problems with Russians and infiltrations. And of course, United States before make a decision, they should understand what actually real situation with this weapon could be in Ukraine. How Ukraine will actually behave with these weapons it's not actually about usage of these weapons against Russians, but mostly the system of, for example, training personnel, how they will store these weapons, missiles, what actually the units will get it, because for my opinion, it shouldn't be some army units, it shouldn't be some special operation forces units, because it's small quantity, but it's in some very professional using, I mean very special using of these.
So to have specialized units.
Yes, it could be pretty decisive weapon on some very decisive point of battlefield. Which
could kind of make sense, instead of having, you said these are limited amounts, instead of spreading these out among infantry units, to have a concentrated force that's specialized.
Yeah, because actually Ukraine has own anti-tank missiles, and it's not so sophisticated like Javelins, because Javelins using a principle fire and forget. So it's the operator could fire and after change the position, and it's very great, very nice to make for special operation forces.
Which makes sense. They can quickly, versus infantry, they're slower to respond than you'd have these specialized units.
Ukrainian missiles, Ukrainian systems, they don't use this system principle fire and forget, so but they much more cheaper. It's like 4-5 times cheaper than United States system, American system. So I think it's easier to spread Ukrainian system in infantry, but
because this isn't a gift. This is an ability to purchase. And I think that might be lost to some people, because it's written often that the U.S. will supply Ukraine with lethal defensive weapons, but it's the ability to purchase these.
I'm not sure, because just 1 hour ago I read that interview of Poltorak, it's Minister of Defense, Ukrainian Minister of Defense, and he told that it could be inside of the package of $350 million, which is United States every year given to Ukraine on the military help. So maybe it could be inside of the this package, but of course, but actually next time it could be just a purchase. So I think it's only first time.
Right. It's not clear at the moment how this will be sent out. And what then? So we talk a bit about the Ukrainian defense industry and the military. What's the status at the moment of the defense industry? I mean, this war, unfortunately, war is a great impetus for development of industrial the defense industry. So where does it stand now?
Yeah, actually, before war, Ukrainian defense industry, they didn't develop at all, and they just using the Soviet heritage to make some export,
they kept the status quo often,
some export contracts to modernize or to repair old Soviet systems in the world, like in post-Soviet world, let's say, like in Africa, Middle East, or Asia or something like this. Now, after 3 years of war, they got a huge like impulse to develop,
yeah.
and yeah, unfortunately, but for industry. From other hand, I could say that it's not impulse steel, it's not impulse to develop something new. A lot of new products, but for serial development, serial production, we didn't have a great success, let's say. Mostly we're talking about repairment and modernization of still old Soviet.
So not as much with the
weapons,
production,
like tanks, army vehicles, aircraft, helicopters. Mostly it's Soviet equipment, which is repairment. We have a repairment and modernization. Now in Ukrainian units we have almost 100% weapon ready to fight. It's great. It means that Ukrainian soldiers could fight with full package of equipment they should have. What we expect next years, let's say, that Ukrainian defense industry and the private sector, because before war we actually had like 90% of state sector, state-owned plants and
so
enterprises.
Looking at this public-private enterprising.
And now the huge development of private enterprises and business in defense sector. It's great because private business is more flexible.
Absolutely.
And they trying to find what soldier needs to fight, and then it's great because of small solutions, which is very helpful on a battlefield. And we expect that next 2018, 2019 we will have a huge explosion of new products by private sector together with state sector, but mostly from the private sector.
All right, so this is looking good then. So what this helps with the U.S.'s decision is creating hopefully a precedent, a symbolic move, but as well to maybe open the door to other countries to change their policies. Yeah. And it's looking, from what you say, that we should see some good development in the next few years.
Yeah, actually, what I should say that in 2020 year, we should have a huge process of decisions about the key elements like air defense, like aircraft and air defense systems, like ships, navy ships, actually all of system which is will be on the end of the life. Even we have a huge modernization now, but after 3, 4, 5 years we should have a change everything. And I think the United States could be our great partner to make it, because if we're talking about aircraft or air defense system, like Poland now, they should have a huge decisions how to operate with next generation of equipment. And I think the United States could be our main partner, even partner to help, for example, like Ukrainians, the Polish defense industries to make something together with American technologies. Because Ukraine and Poland, for example, they have a defense industry, but technology, critical technology, we need to have from our Western partners. It's for sure. So United States could be like a source for our new technologies, for next generation equipment.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being with us today, Mykhaylo.
Thank you.
Thank you for this insight.
Thank you.
We've been speaking today with Mykhaylo Samus from the Center for Army Conversion and Disarmament Studies. Thank you for watching.